Hey guys, how's it going? League here. We've got some more changes to Survival on the Midnight Beta, and these include some pack leader buffs and some Sentinel nerfs. We also have some undocumented changes. So Blizzard responded to all the feedback from last week's focus changes on the PTR, and they reduced the focus cost on Bomb, and the spec feels a lot better to play now. But at the same time, this just makes dual wield even worse. So let's start off with the focus changes at max level and go into tuning after. Pack leader is starting to creep up on Sentinel, and we might see a hero talent swap soon. And I also want to address the biggest issues that remain with Survival and what bugs are still left as well. So just in case you missed it, Survival had our focus economy change last week on the PTR. These changes felt really awful to play with, and we had a lot of downtime because we didn't have enough focus. However, this was partially reverted, and now Wildfire Bomb costs 10 focus instead of 20. So that change, combined with Raptor Swipe, means that we are no longer focus starved. This graph here also shows my focus on the beta, and I'm not ignoring focus anymore, but I'm also not focus starved either, and I think this is a really good spot to be in. You can see the focus bar moving up and going down, but rarely am I actually capping out on focus or ignoring it. We also have some hero talent tuning this week. Sentinel was outperforming pack leader in pretty much every situation, so this tuning should help bring the two hero trees closer together. For pack leader, the Wyvern damage bonus has been buffed, and now the Wyvern should be up to a 25% damage increase that lasts for 22 seconds. And with this, it's going to be really noticeable whenever your Wyvern is up. Now the Wyvern is bugged, so we still can't test pack leader properly, but more on that later. The Sentinel nerfs are going to bring Sentinel closer to pack leader. They're not massive nerfs, and I'll show why on some logs next, but basically tip of the spear is only affecting a little over half our damage, so nerfing the tip bonus by 2% really isn't a massive nerf or anything. Sentinel's mark is nerfed as well, but this one's also not too bad. Now, whenever Sentinel's mark is active, the initial hit of bomb is nerfed by 20%. This does not affect the dot, and not every bomb you cast will have Sentinel's mark active. It's also less noticeable in AoE, since Sentinel's mark was only buffing bomb against the single marked target. Lastly, we have a 10% nerf to Boomstick. This is a pretty small nerf on single target, like around 1%, but it's going to be more noticeable in AoE since Boomstick was like 25 to 30% of your damage. Now Boomstick is also still bugged and doing 15% more damage than it's supposed to. Boomstick benefits from tip of the spear twice. Once for the baseline 15% of tip, and then a second time for your actual tip bonus. So hopefully this can get fixed. Like, I feel like we shouldn't be nerfing Boomstick if it's still bugged and doing more than it should. Anyway, up next is some logs. I'm going to compare two-hand versus dual wield, as well as pack leader versus Sentinel. So now I've got a lot of logs to go over. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about two-hand versus dual wield. If you want to hear me talk about dual wield more in depth, please check out my previous video. I really dive into the issues with dual wielding in that video and why it's never going to compete with two-hand. But anyway, here's a quick look at two-hand versus dual wield Sentinel. We've got two-hand doing about 77k, dual wield doing about 74k, and that's about 4% lower, and that matches the tooltips that I showed in my previous video. Anyway, the key takeaway here. Dual wield will never compete with two-hand as survival if survival does not get offhand scaling added to our abilities. This is what the damage breakdown looks like for Sentinel single target. So we've got bomb at nearly 22%, and this makes sense, you know, Sentinel's the bomb hero tree. Strike is one right below that. Lunar Storm, Raptor Swipe. Moonlight Chakram does a lot of damage. For something you press once a minute, it feels very satisfying, and this gets buffed by tip of the spear now, so it can hit pretty hard. Raptor Strike. Boomstick down at a little over 6%, and this is why the Boomstick nerf isn't as relevant on single target. Boomstick's not a giant source of damage on single target, so nerfing it by 10% isn't the end of the world. Then melees and kill commands and so on. I also just want to go over the tip of the spear nerf for Sentinel. So the Sentinel tip bonus has been reduced by 2%, and it's not that big of a deal because not all of our damage sources are buffed by tip of the spear. For example, tip of the spear only buffs the direct damage portion of your spells. So the dot of Wildfire Bomb is not buffed by tip, so that's not affected. Strike is 1 damage, not buffed by tip. Lunar Storm, not affected by tip. Melees, not affected by tip. Kill Command, not affected by tip. Claw, not affected by tip. So it's about 45% of your damage that's not affected by tip at all. So nerfing tip by 2% when tip only affects about half of your damage is not a super big nerf, to be honest, so we're kind of chilling there. Pretty reasonable nerf to bring it closer to pack leader. And really quickly, I've got damage sorted by average cast just to show how much damage every single ability does per cast. We've got Moonlight Chakram on top, so Moonlight Chakram is the clear winner, and it's doing almost double the damage per cast that Boomstick is doing. So Moonlight Chakram is very powerful, it feels really good to press, and it looks sick when it comes out. Boomstick's right under that, and we would also have Takedown like right around where Boomstick is, but you don't see that here because Takedown is split between player and pet. So if those two were merged, the average cast would probably be higher than Boomstick too. And then Bomb, Raptor Swipe, Raptor Strike, and so on. So we've got Moonlight Chakram doing a ton of damage, Boomstick and Takedown right under that, and then Bomb. Up next we have Pack Leader, two-hand versus dual wield. two-hand on the left, dual-wield on the right. And dual-wield is just behind. It's a little less than the difference between Sentinel two-hand and dual-wield, but it's still behind by about 4%. And this is bad. It's only going to get worse as the expansion progresses and our item level increases. Survival needs offhand scaling added to our abilities if dual-wield is going to compete with two-hand. This gap is just really big, and Pack Leader has an advantage for dual-wielding, but that advantage just doesn't matter. Dual-wielding generates more focus with lethal barbs for Pack Leader, but we don't need that extra focus, so it just doesn't matter. And this is the damage breakdown for Pack Leader on single target. Strike as 1 is the clear winner up here, at nearly 24% of our damage, and this makes sense. Pack Leader does more pet damage than Sentinel does, so Strike as 1 does a lot of damage there. Then we have Raptor Swipe and Raptor Strike right under that. And this is one of the big differences between Sentinel and Pack Leader. Pack Leader is doing a lot more physical damage, and you can see like all our damage sources except for Wildfire Bomb is Fizz, and even part of Wildfire Bomb is Fizz because this is bleed damage. So almost an entirely physical damage tree, where Sentinel is more magic damage. So Strike is 1, Raptor Swipe, Raptor Strike. Boomstick at a little over 9%, which is higher than it was for Sentinel, and that's because as Pack Leader, you can sync up Boomstick with Wyvern, so you can get a pretty big buff on Boomstick. Now, once Wyvern is fixed because it has some bugs, this number might even go up a little more, so if you like doing big Boomstick casts, Pack Leader is pretty cool for that. Anyway, that's Pack Leader single target. More Fizz damage compared to Sentinel. So now we've got Pack Leader versus Sentinel on single target. We've got Sentinel on the left and Pack Leader on the right. And both of these were done using two-handed weapons because two-hand is just better than dual-wielding. So Pack Leader was about 3k DPS behind Sentinel, which is roughly 4%. And honestly, if bugs are fixed with Pack Leader, it might be able to bridge the gap. So right now, the biggest bug with Pack Leader is with the Wyvern. The Wyvern is supposed to start out at 15%, but it's starting out at 10%, so that's 5% less damage than it's supposed to give us. The Wyvern is also not getting extended by Wildfire Bomb, so the Wyvern lasts 10 seconds shorter than it's supposed to. So the Wyvern in total is missing 5% damage and 10 seconds on its duration. So I think getting those fixed and adding those to Pack Leader might even bridge the gap, or maybe even make Pack Leader past Sentinel. It's kind of hard to know for sure. We can only do napkin math for now, but it would be really nice for that to get fixed so we can test them out and see how close these two trees really are. Lastly, I'm going to show some sustained AoE logs and then show some focus charts as well to show what the focus changes look like on beta. And I couldn't put Sentinel and Pack Leader in a comparison window, but Sentinel was about 9% ahead, and I'll show it right after this. But Sentinel was doing 256k over 5 minutes. Pack Leader was about, I think, 233k, so about 9% behind. But really quickly, just looking at the damage breakdown, Boomstick and Bomb, about 50% of your damage combined, so lots of explosives. Then we've got Strike as 1, with 2 against many, and Lunar Storm. And then Takedown itself. I was playing flanked here, so Takedown's hitting pretty hard and it's doing cleave damage. So it's doing about 6.5% of my damage. So Takedown feels really good to press, and it's also really noticeable when you press it. Like even Moonlight Chakram, this is a single target only ability and it's doing 3% of my damage. So even on sustained AoE, Moonlight Chakram is pretty noticeable. Anyway, that's it for Sentinel on these sustained AoE dummies. And now sustained AoE for Pack Leader. So Pack Leader was doing about 234k, which is roughly 9% behind Sentinel. And that 9% is about double the gap of what it was on single target. So I'm not sure if Wyvern bug fixes would be enough for AoE for Pack Leader to compete with Sentinel. Now I know it is sustained AoE, but still a bit concerned because that's a pretty big gap on AoE. Anyway, damage breakdown. We've got Strike as 1 on top, which matches single target. You're doing more pet damage as Pack Leader, so Strike as 1 does a lot. Boomstick right under that. And now Sentinel had Bomb here, but Pack Leader has Raptor Swipe. Bombs don't do as much damage for Pack Leader because you're doing a lot more physical damage, and Pack Leader also has Raptor Strike and Raptor Swipe modifiers, so Raptor Swipe does a lot of damage for Pack Leader. And then Bomb under that. So if you like doing more Fizz damage, like I mentioned earlier, Pack Leader is pretty cool, so this is more Fizz based compared to Sentinel's magic. Now I did want to spend some time looking at focus on the beta, because last week on the PTR we had some pretty controversial focus changes. The spec felt really bad to play on PTR, and we were running out of focus and having a lot of downtime. But that's been addressed. So not only do we have Raptor Swipe to save us focus on the beta, but we also had the changes partially walked back. So instead of Wildfire Bomb costing 20 focus, it now costs 10 focus. So we're saving a lot of focus that way. And you can see here, like on this graph, I have a pretty healthy amount of focus for the entire fight. I'm almost never dipping below this 50 focus mark. And even sometimes I'm wasting focus because we have a lot of focus gen now. Like down here in the bottom right, Kill Command focus wasted. I wasted 98 focus, and I wasted 56 from Takedown. So maybe I could have played a little better and not wasted this focus, or maybe not. Maybe it's inevitable. Anyway, the point is, the spec feels great to play now. There's no forced downtime, we're not really ignoring focus or capping out on focus too much, but we're also not playing around with it, so maybe that's something that does need to get addressed in the future, but right now, I don't think focus needs to be touched at all. We have a healthy amount of focus, and it feels really good and fluid to play survival. Also, really quickly, here's Pack Leader's focus. Now, it's a little lower on average than Sentinel, but I'm also not running Flanker's Advantage, so I could make my kill command generate 5 more focus if I wanted to, and then I wouldn't have these lows that you're seeing in a few points of this graph. But even without Flanker's Advantage, like, I had plenty of focus throughout this entire fight, and I did waste a tiny bit of focus, like 46 on kill command, 20 on lethal barbs, 96 on takedown, so maybe I could have been a little more efficient, but my point is, even Pack Leader without the extra focus regen talent has enough focus to play with. So overall, the spec feels pretty good to play on beta, both hero trees do. So I want to finish off this video with the biggest remaining issues on survival, as well as some remaining bugs on the spec. Right now, I think the number one issue that's remaining on survival is dual wield. Now, if you want to hear me talk about this more in depth, please check out my previous video because I talk about it a lot. But to sum up that video, survival abilities do not factor in offhand weapon DPS when calculating ability damage. Now, other dual wield specs, like Frost DK and Windwalker Monk, do get offhand scaling, but survival does not have this. Dual wield will never be competitive if this is not changed. Now, since dual wield is so poorly tuned, this also means that our Great Vault is going to have additional weapons that we don't want, and this is going to clog our loot pool. There's no way to filter out one-handed weapons from our loot pool, meaning a one-hand weapon dropping is going to feel awful. If dual wield tuning isn't changed, it would be a really nice quality of life change to have some way to filter out one-hand versus two-hand weapons. Another big issue is our bleed package. So survival has 5 talent nodes dedicated to a bleed package, but survival bleeds are really weak and they're not worth building around. Something like Shower of Blood is never going to be worth the talent points as long as bleeds aren't doing very much damage. Even for Pack Leader, which has 20% extra bleed damage, a bleed build is not worth it. I also cover this more in depth in a couple of videos, so I'll put those in the description as well. But having these talents be so undertuned really limits the amount of builds that we're able to run. Sorry for the flashbang, but here's the bug sheet that I mentioned earlier. Now, this is a bug sheet from Midnight Beta, and we update it every single time there's a new beta build, so we go through this list and we see what's bugged and what's fixed. And down here, you can see everything crossed out is something that was fixed. So there are a lot of fixed bugs throughout the beta, but we still have a lot of bugs as well. And these more complex bugs have logs attached to them, and I'll show an example of what these bugs are as well. But basically, this is organized by class, hero talent, and then spec. And for example, the Wyvern bug that I mentioned earlier for Pack Leader, it's listed here, so the Wyvern damage bonus is incorrect. And then Wyvern does not get extended by casting Wildfire Bomb. If you'd like to read more about that, it's in the bug sheet. Sentinel has some quality of life bugs, but then the base spec itself also has some bugs. And there's some beneficial bugs and there's some negative bugs here. So for example, Apex talents only buff the periodic portion of Wildfire Bomb by 10%. So this is the Wildfire Bomb dot. It's supposed to be buffed by 20%, but it's only getting buffed by 10%. So we're missing 10% Wildfire Bomb dot damage. Boomstick is gaining 15% extra damage from Tip of the Spear, so another beneficial bug. Flame Fang Pitch dot, buffed by Tip of the Spear, more beneficial. Grenade Juggler, extra CDR, more beneficial. Now here's a really big negative one. Outland Venom doesn't work at all, and this has been tested every single week since Alpha began, and it still does not work. Basically, for every dot that you put on a target as a survival hunter, you get 4% extra critical strike damage. But that doesn't work, and this is a talent we should be running on a single target, but since it doesn't work, we can't. And then some other really big bugs in here as well that are negative. Like this one, for example. Tip of the Spear does not always apply to all hits of Wildfire Bomb. So what does that mean? Well, here's the log that I attached to the bug. When you cast Wildfire Bomb with only a single stack of Tip of the Spear, not every single hit of your bomb is buffed by Tip. You can see here, there are 2 different times for when bomb hits. You have this first hit, and then this second hit. And Tip faded before the second hit actually landed. So only these first 2 hits of bomb are actually buffed by Tip, which is indicated by this Tip icon here, and you can see the damage difference. Right here, bomb hit for 5758 with Tip active. But then Tip fades and it hits for 4918 on the next target, which is 20% lower. Coincidentally, this is as Pack Leader, so your Tip of the Spear buff is at 20%. So Tip faded, and your bomb is doing less damage because of it. So when you cast Wildfire Bomb with only 1 stack of Tip of the Spear, you might be missing out on a lot of damage, and that's a big problem. There's also another issue with Takedown. The pet portion of Takedown is only hitting 4 targets, but the player portion is hitting 5 targets. I'm not sure what's up with that. Maybe our pet can't count, but it should be hitting 1 more target. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you liked the video, please give it a like, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe because it really helps me out and it helps the channel out as well. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.